recording
Oh, can I start?
on Stuart's.
Hello, everyone. This is Mulo from the Beats Buzz, hosted by Big Little at Bush Radio. And today I'm coming with you for another episode around the fundamentals of music rights as they relate to the royalty structure in South Africa. So, to start off, what I wanted to open this discussion with is the distinction between the master and the publishing as it relates to music. So, a lot of people have heard those terms before, so I'm going to break it down for you. What your master refers to is the sound recording. What the publishing refers to is the lyrical composition. So, for example, when you're done in, let's say, GarageBand, FL, Logic, Pro Tools, and whatever, when you export or bounce the final thing and you name your song, and that's the song that you put on Spotify, you upload through DistroKid, that is the master. That is the sound recording. The publishing refers to the lyrical and the song composition as a whole. So if someone wrote the lyrics, if someone also wrote instrument parts, let's say guitar, piano, that fits under the composition. And in the whole royalty structure as it relates to music businesses, there's different streams of royalties for different aspects of the recording and for the publishing. So to start off, I'm going to start with the performance rights or the performance royalties. So the performance rights refer to the royalties that you as an artist are entitled to every time your song is performed publicly. And the people who administer this royalty is SAMRO. So to give you an example, if I play my songs, which are registered under SAMRO, let's say at any live music event or live music venue, outside of the contract between me and the venue, what happens is when I perform it publicly, I'm entitled to a royalty. That's your rights. Even with a guy we interviewed, Stephen Thomas, about 2 episodes ago, I think, he was talking to me about DJs make a lot of money because when they, specifically producer DJs, if I'm going to be honest, because if you're one of the people in the scenes and you're making your own mixes from actually producing them and you perform them at live places, you are entitled to a specific royalty. The only thing is these songs need to be registered. That's the only problem. But outside of that, the next royalty is the mechanical royalties. And what the mechanical royalties refer to is the royalty stream that you're entitled to every time your song is reproduced. So back in the day, this would have been vinyls, CDs, and cassettes. But on a digital scale, this kind of refers to per units reproduction. So think of streams, think of digital downloads, iTunes, things like that. So every time your song is streamed, downloaded, there's an algorithmic shift that's happening where it's being reproduced. Even if you don't see it on a digital scale, that's what's happening. And it also happens for CDs, vinyls, and things like that. If you're outsourcing the production of them, if people come to you and want to sell physical copies of your intellectual property as a musician, outside of streams, outside of the digital structure, you are entitled to royalties, and those are the mechanical royalties. The next type of royalty is needle time royalties. And to basically cover this, what it is are the royalties that you as an artist are entitled to when your song is played publicly by licensed music people or venues. So the difference between this and what I was doing and what I was talking about with SAMRO is needle time royalties are administered by SAMPRA, and the difference is the license part. So remember what I was talking about with SAMRO, it's when you perform your song publicly. So think of live music, because SAMRO covers the songwriters, the authors, composers, people who do the compositional aspect of the work. It's separate from the sound recording. What Needle Time royalties, who are administered by SAMPRA, what they cover is the actual sound recording being played by licensed music venues. So think of radio stations, bars, clubs, etc. That's the type of vibe we're getting into. So outside of this whole royalty structure, I also wanted to talk a bit about publishing as well, because publishing separate from what I was saying earlier about publishing versus the master. So publishing as a sector in the music industry itself is basically referring to the administering of your catalog, the promotion of it by publishers, who are these recognized entities who take songwriters, producers, and composers and basically either administer their catalog depending on their agreements, or they take a percentage of the copyrights, but for this percentage of the copyrights, they promote it for sync placements, which is getting your music on adverts and TV, because that's a whole separate industry in itself. If you look at a 2019 summit with the SAMRO members, I think it was another guy interviewing one of the SAMRO leaders, and he was basically saying how people who produce, let's say, if you look at SABC, that musical theme that plays in the background every time you log into a news channel or tune in or something, every time that's played, someone is receiving a specific royalty because their music is being played publicly on a licensed broadcast. So that's what it refers to, and that's how people make a lot of money when it comes to sync licensing. And also, one thing you need to understand when it comes to the publishing aspect, because I think I mentioned it earlier how no, I didn't actually mention it, but there was an interview done with Tidra Moses, a very famous artist, and basically what she was saying is that in publishing, there's 200%. There's the songwriter's share, and then there's the publisher's share. So outside of a traditional record label deal, what a publishing deal would entail is the publishers, they give artists, songwriters, producers a specific amount of money to write songs. They don't represent artists the same way record labels would on a holistic level. So that's completely separate. And basically what that means is when you're writing songs, you are entitled to the songwriter's share, but depending on whether or not you're signed to a publisher, there's also a publishing share that you are entitled to, or your publisher is entitled to. But the thing is, you don't need a publisher to collect the publisher's share. Hence why Tidra referred to it as 200%, because if you are your own publisher and your own songwriter as an independent musician, you are entitled to every single stream of royalties as it relates to these rights for your music. So that's basically what I'm covering now. And the last people I want to mention are RISA. So what RISA are, they are the Recording Industry Association of South Africa, something like that. And what they administer is IRSC codes. And what the IRSC codes are is the digital identifications for your songs. So think of it as an ISBN code for your books, something similar to that. Because a lot of artists think when you upload onto Spotify, Apple, or these digital streaming platforms, that doesn't legitimize your music on a legal scale at all, because you need to consider how many people are actually uploading millions of songs each day. So in terms of protecting your songs from infringements, the best thing you can do is, like I said earlier, register with all these entities and also get your IRSC code, that digital ID for your song. And also, as it relates to metadata, a common example I love to give when it comes to metadata is, given that these systems aren't really algorithmic, they're a bit outdated in terms of paying royalties, I'm going to give you the example of me naming my song improperly. Let's say my song was called Love and Light featuring my best friend Kelly. So let's say I register under SAMRO. I say Love and Light, space, bracket, small letter F, featuring Kelly. But under a separate registration, let's say I'm uploading through DistroKid and I've uploaded publicly on these streaming platforms. If there's a mess up in whether a letter is capital or whether it's lowercase or whether there's a specific space between the bracket and the letter, you're not going to get your royalties because the allocation doesn't necessarily know what to do. When I refer to the allocation, I'm referring to the system's pickup of these metadata registration details that are necessary for you to get your royalty streams. So what the IRSC code does, it kind of minimizes the risk of you being left out on thousands of rands in royalties because of a simple mistake. And also, without your IRSC code, I'd hope you'd want to become big as an artist, because what RISA does is they also administer the certificates when your song goes, let's say, gold, platinum, diamond, God willingly. And you kind of need an IRSC code to do that, because like I said, simply uploading your song onto these digital platforms and things like that, it doesn't legitimize it. So there's no algorithms to pick up something that's floating around the same way millions of other songs are floating around. So yeah, that's what RISA does. And on a holistic level, considering all these different streaming royalties, publishing, and what RISA does in terms of metadata registration, it's important to have these fundamentals as an artist because I think I mentioned earlier that a lot of artists think you have to upload through, let's say, DistroKid, and that's the only way you receive royalties, but it actually doesn't. Not even in terms of legitimizing your song on a legal scale, but just as an artist to protect yourself from infringements when your song is played publicly, when your sound recording is used without your permission. What registering with these entities does, outside of just you receiving your royalties, it protects you. It literally protects you because you can pull up that, no, actually, I did register and log my song with Samro, with Capasso, with Sampra. I do have the IRSC code, so it is recognized on a legal and algorithmic basis with these entities to protect yourself from infringement, because it is very easy to, let's say, you're performing at an open mic event and you're teasing or just want to see how the crowd is going to receive an unreleased song. Let's say someone likes the guitar riff you did in this unreleased song. They can take, not even the guitar riff, they can take the song as a whole if they search up if it's not registered with the necessary entities. That's why I say to people and artists, if you're performing publicly, make sure you are registered with these entities and also make sure your songs are registered as well, because it's not a case of you perform publicly and then you get the due royalties. It's not a case of that at all. You need to register these things with the correct metadata and, like I said, preferably with the IRSC codes. That way, the system can properly allocate your royalties when it's time for payouts, because if there's any mishap in terms of how your song is named or whether or not it's registered, and like I said, you need to notify them of your registrations. If there's any mishap around that, then you're losing out on a lot of money. And this is money that you kind of need to sustain yourself as an artist. And it's just necessary to just do these fundamentals when you're doing something like registering your intellectual property as a musician. So yeah, that's what I wanted to cover today. And next week, what I'm going to be speaking about more specifically is how to actually register with these separate entities, because I can highlight the fundamentals now, but when it comes to teaching people how to actually register with these separate entities, that's a whole different deal. So that's what I'm going to be covering next week and in the coming weeks as well. So I hope you enjoy that. And this was, I don't know, episode 4 or 5, guys, but I'm signing out now. Hope you enjoyed.